Hello, my name is Lyndie Kelley, and today we're going to be discussing the social cognitive theory and how it ties into motivational interviewing. So some learning objectives today. We're going to be looking at an overview of the social cognitive theory, some variables within the social cognitive theory, and different constructs that you can utilize as a nutrition professional trying to affect some behavioral change. We'll talk about motivational interviewing and what it is, as well as how it ties in and links to the social cognitive theory and how they can partner together to give a client the best possible outcome. And we'll finish by discussing how those things really come together to ensure that the best outcome is met. So the social cognitive theory is really three-pronged. It was created by the social scientist Albert Bandura, and it's formally known as a social learning theory. It's overgone a little bit of a revamp in the past few years, and it's based on the process of something called reciprocal determinism. So basically, how factors constantly play off of each other, and it provides a framework for predicting and understanding behavior. And behavior change is really affected by these three main factors within social cognitive theory: environmental factors, behavioral factors, and personal factors, which this great infographic to the right really demonstrates. So it's one theory, but there are many applications of the social cognitive theory, and it provides several concepts from which nutritional professionals can develop a really very client-centric intervention. Their outcome expectancies, self-regulation, behavioral capacity, personal expectations, self-efficacy, observational learning, reinforcement, and facilitation. So we'll discuss each of these a little bit more in depth. And much like the picture here on the right with all of these light bulbs, not all of these concepts may work for an individual client, but there might be that one that has an aha light bulb moment for them. So it's important to understand all of them and be able to pick which one or which several may help your client best. So outcome expectancies are basically beliefs about the value or consequences of committing to making a change, and the chances of being successful with that change. So the way that you could implement that is by educating the client about the health implications of their current behavior as it is, and then educate them about the benefits to potentially changing their behavior. So much like this little pole vaulter here, you never really know what the other side may hold unless you're willing to try getting there. And really being willing to be open to making that change. Self-regulation or control is the ability to work toward a goal-directed behavior. And it provides an opportunity for decision-making and problem-solving. And that autonomy, as we'll discuss a little bit later on, is very important to the social cognitive theory as well as motivational interviewing. And it involves self-monitoring and self-reward. So it's really a series of checklist behavior change. And much like this little infographic below with the check marks and the line, it's not always linear. Sometimes goals ebb and flow. You succeed, you don't succeed. But what's most important for the client is to understand that what's most important for them is checking off each of those steps along the way, even if it's not a linear progression and there are ebbs and flows. Behavioral capacity is the knowledge about how to perform specific behaviors. And really what's most important here is learning new skills that support behavioral change that didn't exist prior. And the provision of comprehensive, mostly hands-on educational tools are important as well, so that clients can really dig into understanding how they need to behave and the skills that support those behaviors. Self-efficacy, this is really kind of one of the most important constructs of social cognitive theory, as well as motivational interviewing. Excuse me. It's the aptitude to perform behaviors that lead to desired outcomes, and that's what we're about, is that desired outcome with that behavior change. And it's really about providing opportunities for the clients to develop confidence, and that's a key to the brain here, as you see in skill sets. Having confidence in the skill that you're learning and then how to employ it. As well as creating small, attainable goals so that success can be experienced over and over, and small successes when put together really help equal a large goal in sum. So observational learning is skill acquisition through watching others' behavior. And this could be on social media, it could be in person, it could be within a family or peer group. But watching is one of the ways that we learn best, and that begins early on in life as well. If you've ever seen a small child or a baby, they're constantly watching and learning. It's a human behavior. So providing opportunities for a client to observe desirable behaviors in action is really important, because they may not have any concept of what you're asking them to do, but when they can see it in action, it makes more sense. And there's 4 pieces to observational learning from Albert Bandura's kind of research, and that's attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. So you want to have attention to what you're doing, you want to be able to retain what you've learned, and then reproduce it and stay motivated about reaching the next step along the way. Reinforcement is very important to the social cognitive theory as well, and it's basically the encouragement of behaviors that increase the likelihood of repeated positive reoccurrence of those behaviors. So there are 2 different types of motivation and reinforcement. It's important as a counselor or nutritional professional to teach internal motivation. It's tough to teach internal motivation. It's a bit of a misnomer, but what I mean by that is help bring it about and teaching the importance of it. Internal motivation really harkens to what's inside a client and what they already bring to the table and how we can best bring that forward. So it's usually self-initiated rewards that are personally meaningful. It's that person's real why, finding their why. And then providing external motivation sometimes helps as well. So examples of that would be prizes, awards, or praise. Everybody likes a pat on the back to know that they're headed the right direction, but ultimately internal motivation usually trumps external motivation in terms of continued success. What you see here is something called the habit loop from a book that I really enjoy. And it's called The Power of Habit. It talks about how there's a cue or something that happens right away that spurs on a normal routine, which leads to a reward. And the reward may be positive or negative in terms of our behavior that we want to elicit. Obviously, we want to try to get a positive behavior, but the loop is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we have a cue to behavior, we have a positive routine in place, hopefully we'll get a positive reward, which then in turn helps us repeat the behavior. Facilitation is the access to resources and tools, as well as environmental change that help make a behavior easier to repeatedly perform. So examples of this are social support, and social environmental cues and peer and family interaction are very important. As we talked about earlier, the social cognitive theory really relies on the environmental factors being able to be dynamic and change within the behavior and the personal factors as well. And you can provide educational support and knowledge that helps support those new behaviors. That's another way to facilitate continued growth and change until they reach their goal. And then ways to maintain that goal. A lot of people get there, but then don't know how to maintain what they've built up. So if you provide them with resources and tools that can help them make their environmental change positive and conducive to their new behavior, that's important. And personal expectations is the final construct here, and it's the assurance that behavior change will lead to a positive outcome. People don't want to invest their time and effort unless they can be assured that their time and effort is worthwhile. So in order to help understand a personal, individual's expectations and what they would like to get out of this, it's important to assess their motivational stage as well as their motivational needs and what they really want out of their behavior change when they're willing to accept it. And you can't really get started unless they're willing to start. And then the demonstration of positive outcomes in diet are important as well. So motivational interviewing is really all about, it's a client-centered approach to enhancing behavior change and inducing change talk. It's particularly useful in cultivating intrinsic motivation and when clients are conflicted about making change. So it's a way to understand a client's readiness, and it's a collaborative approach to getting a client started with change. And motivational interviewing really comes down to three main components. They are collaboration, evocation, and autonomy. And these three things really evoke the spirit of motivational interviewing. It's important to have a collaborative approach as a client and counselor and to work as a team to help the client get where they need to go. Both the client and the counselor both have unique perspectives and skill sets that bring about change, and respecting that is key to building a successful therapeutic relationship. Evocation is the counselor's ability to facilitate a client's reasons for change, to get them to actually speak it, and that's called change talk. Excuse me. And getting them to admit that they are at a point in life where they need to create a change is important, and having them verbalize it even more so. And autonomy is the reason for change. Needs to come from the client in order to be authentic. It can't be something that's put upon them by their family. Maybe a family member wants them to make a change. But it needs to come from them, and if it's intrinsically related, it's usually more successful. So connecting the dots between social cognitive theory and motivational interviewing, they complement each other as techniques and really facilitate behavior change. So here are some things, 5 things that they both do. They both value bringing about self-efficacy as the end goal. If behaviors are driven from within and the individual is able to be self-reliant, then they will hopefully maintain those behaviors and be more successful. They both emphasize the importance of decisional balance and skill development. They both rely on the ability to interact with that dynamic, ever-changing environment and the skills that are necessary to do that. They both emphasize the importance of empathy, and that expression of empathy by the counselor, to the client, as well as social support for that individual. Change is never easy, and it's important to have someone who understands and supports your choice to change. And they both focus on identifying barriers to change and potential roadblocks, but also implementing strategies to overcome them. So social cognitive theory plus motivational interviewing hopefully equals success. And not just social cognitive theory, there are other behavioral theories that may be more applicable to certain individuals. But in this case specifically, if a client's motivated and demonstrates self-efficacious behavior, studies have shown that they're more likely to be successful at achieving their end game and really changing successfully. The driving force behind motivational interviewing is the provider's ability to help kind of bring about that self-awareness and elicit that change talk that increases the desire to make and maintain that change. But it has to be client-centric. It has to be about the individual in front of you at that time. And a key theme of both of these theories or strategies is the client's level of optimism about what the future holds for them and how the changes that they make will impact their future. And that helps keep motivation high when things get difficult, which inevitably they will. And I think that optimism factor is really why social cognitive theory resonates with me as a professional. I find that I use motivational interviewing often with my student athletes without even knowing that I did. And I definitely do employ the social cognitive theory as well. And I think that these 3 kind of bullet points hit that. I need them to be self-efficacious in their behavior. I need it to be about them and have them on board with what makes sense to them. And then I need them to be optimistic about how, when they make a change, it will affect them for the better and for the positive moving forward. I just prefer putting that spin on things in life. I think we have better outcomes overall. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Here's on my reference list. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you.